Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome. I'm Alison from the Southern Cross Postgraduate Association. So today is our second workshop of a four-part series on the Postgraduate Masterclass for Career Success. Today is writing a winning cover letter and answering selection criteria. So I am recording, and I'll post a link into the chat box. We post everything to a YouTube channel. And I encourage you to become a member of the Postgraduate Association, and I'll also post that link in the chat box for you as well. So thanks, everyone, and over to you, Beck. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Beck Brown, and I am super duper happy to be here as part of these working with the Postgraduate Association. And later on, towards the end, we'll have representative staff member, the fabulous Susie Griselle. She will come in and help you find out more about how you can take additional steps beyond here, beyond these workshops, that additional support that we have for you ongoing as postgraduate students at Southern Cross University. So we'll touch on this again at the end when Susie comes in, but I really like this slide because it's really simple for you to see how you can get that ongoing support. There's staff that's there 5 days a week, and it's available for our online students, our international students, our face-to-face students of all faculties. And the work that team do is amazing. They have special events. They can help you with job advertisements, so helping you even find, beyond here, particular, it might be industry-specific websites that you weren't previously aware of. You can have career consultations with the team. They can help you, perhaps you've enrolled in your postgraduate study and you've got queries, where you're heading, you still want to do postgrad, and perhaps, you need some further direction. Perhaps it's finding part-time work. Perhaps it's finding work experience or placement, decisions around your placement. It might be just support in terms of, what's at the end of this in terms of your study. And you'll probably find that the team, my experience with that team is that they are extraordinary human beings. They really care about what they're doing. They really care about our students, and they're there to help. You can have ongoing appointments as well. Like, I've known Ashley, and he's now the general manager, an international student. He's now general manager postgraduate student, general manager in Tasmania with a hotel. And he really, really utilised that service. He had, I think, 9 consultations, but it's free. And so it's there available for you. The other option is myself. I'm here if you prefer. It's also a free service. Whilst we're in these workshops, you're also most welcome to connect with myself to have an appointment on any of those topics. I usually offer them at the end of the series, but I'll put my details in at the end if there's something you specifically. We had somebody last week who immediately he needed some help immediately, and he jumped straight into the SCU careers service and made an appointment with Susie for you to meet. The other final thing there is interview preparation. We talked a little bit about interview preparation last week. We're going to talk about it again next week, but it is definitely one of the gaps. It's a kind of a ding-a-ling-a-ling. It's one of the gaps, the areas that I see students really need the most, even our top students. And when I say top, I find that the people that come to our workshops are actually our best, some of our best students, because you're driven to do well and to succeed. We're going to start talking about the cover letter. If you haven't done so already, I'd suggest zooming into our workshop that we did last week, which was an overview of all the employment topics. And you will find that I've highlighted the key components from things like cover letters, getting ready for work, resumes, interviews. So it's a nice snapshot there for you. But today we're going to talk about the cover letter. and the selection criteria, which forms part of the cover letter. Some of it will be a little bit repetitious, some reminders. I've found that certainly my experience with students and also for myself is that we need to hear things in different ways, and often that repetition can be really helpful for things to land, but also a little bit of activity, a little bit of brainstorming, of which we'll do in this session. So here are the key things, and perhaps whatever is useful for you, Alison sends out the slides at the end of the workshops, but you may like to take screenshots of things that you think, oh, okay, and you can use that as a little checklist. So here's a nice little checklist for the cover letter, your contact details and their contact details. That's something that I see often missed, the date, often missed. Your education, I always suggest to put your education into the top paragraph. Because it's your powerhouse, really. It's one of your key selling points. Our STU postgraduate students have really good, very positive employment outcomes, and you are valued and will continue to be as postgraduate students. Highlighting your achievements, and we'll spend a lot of time talking about that today. Your relevant experience. Last week, I talked about ways to gain relevant experience. It's a wonderful time, and I won't spend a lot of time talking about that, but what I will say that at the moment, post-pandemic, there is so many opportunities. Events are out there back up and running again, and there are so many opportunities for our students to gain additional experience. If you have, what I often see, and I know it's hard, I often see students have a choice about whether to do in a postgraduate setting. It's not always built in. So for example, MBA, there is an elective unit, or elective units actually. One is professional development and the other one is internship. I would strongly suggest, we're running the professional development unit next term. It's a fabulous unit. It's really an extension of all of this, and you get to do assignments around. It's really enjoyable and learn about yourself. So experience that you want to be able to put into that cover letter by either all of those. If you did internship, a little bit of work experience, and that could be, so for example, SCU has an community engagement program called Live Ideas, and if anybody's interested in that, we can talk about that at the end. And then any other community volunteering, that would be a whole page on your resume, which would, and you could put, be a couple of paragraphs in your cover letter, and everything that I have talked about is about standing out. And so if you want to differentiate yourself, the key really is point 4, 5, 6, and 7 there. And then there's lots of different ways to do additional smaller training. So LinkedIn Learning has training. There's something called MOOCs, which I'll type in here. They're called Massive Online Classrooms. I've done several MOOCs. I really enjoy them. They're free if you complete them in a really short period of time. Just be really careful that you have a look at the terms and conditions on those. They are amazing, and they're run by, I've done it through a couple of universities in America, and they have thousands and thousands of people join them, but they're run by really prestigious universities, and they're called Massive Online Classrooms. I really love them and really enjoy them. If you've got a professional membership association, so myself as a career practitioner, we have there's a couple. There is the CDAA, the Career Development Association of Australia. Just as one example, there is APRA, I think, for our health, which covers things like our midwifery, nursing, probably mental health. So there's all sorts of associations. The benefit of that, it gives you that professionalism. You can get a student membership, which is cheaper, but it also gives you access to additional online learning, webinars, conferences, etc. and you must always sign your cover letter, electronic signature, and then type your name underneath. That's the easiest way to do it. I've got a few students here, so I'll tell you probably the easiest thing for me to tell you. The past things that I have seen wrong, well, not wrong, I don't really like the word wrong, but where there's areas for improvement, big areas, too brief. Now you can use Grammarly to help you. You can get you can get Grammarly as an SCU student. So that's really helpful for your writing. I think it's WW. So all SCU students get access to Grammarly. They have a premium version, but you can still really improve your writing with the free service. They have upped what they're trying to obviously get people into it. So they have upped their game in terms of, trying to get you into the paid version, but it can still be really useful. I would absolutely 100% suggest putting it through Grammarly. So that's one of the things that I've seen really commonly. People forget the date. People often, many instances, they don't address the cover letter they don't put their own contact details on, and they don't put the employer's contact details on. And then the other main thing is, aside from grammar, typos, and in fact, typos and grammar can play a huge component. In a previous work capacity here at SCU, I used to, on this same topic, we used to show a video, and it was a pre-practitioner out of the UK, and he said that 90, when he was looking at applications, he would reduce 90% of them based on poor grammar and spelling. The great thing is that we have those tools that can help you. And then the final thing is examples, very specific. So when they're really generic, so that's why it says always tailor. When they're generic, it's really, really, it's almost a waste of time. So with your if you're going to spend the time doing a cover letter, just make sure that you tailor it. So here are some things that are super duper duper. These are the things, I've given you some of the things that where students get it wrong, but these are the things that you really need to do. So if you were to kind of tune out in the next 5 minutes, and please do it. We've got my strong tips for you. So customize for every role. I'll spend a lot of time talking about that. Boys, it can be really hard to find out who the employer is. Often they won't tell you in the job advertisement, but you can spend a bit of time. You can do a little bit of research and find out who the employer is. If you're a little bit savvy, you can go onto their website, you can have a look on LinkedIn. I've played around with trying to connect with a recruiter on LinkedIn prior to getting an interview. And even before getting the interview, wouldn't suggest it. But what you could do is certainly follow the organisation, and we'll talk about that later. But I wouldn't suggest going, while you're preparing the cover letter, I wouldn't suggest. But what you could do also, though, if it's well in advance and you're going to want to you're going to apply, there's many jobs coming up, at some point you're going to be sending a cover letter. You could get savvy and start to add people to your LinkedIn. And I'll talk about some of the things that I've done on LinkedIn in our coming weeks that have worked, and things that definitely don't work. I was saying last week, I've been playing around with it a little bit, watching a lot of activity, and then I'm doing a bit of experimenting so that I can share with you really genuinely what works and doesn't work. One page only, super duper duper important. And unless they ask for, so there's government jobs, I might just get to, Shanley, I might just, there we go. I'm glad you're here. um, there are some jobs. Ooh, what's my train of some train? Oh yes, there are some government jobs. So, for example, nursing. So it might be something like I know people do mental health, postgrad in mental health, and perhaps it's a hospital facility, psychiatric. The mental health unit, etc., they may ask for a 2-page cover letter, but generally speaking, they're always asking for a 1-page letter unless they state otherwise. The recruitment process as you start, and depending on which way you get lots of emails. Okay, we can see you've registered, or if you're not going through something like Seek. So it's really important to pay attention to all of the instructions, which can be really hard because we just get so many emails and we get bombarded like it's been accepted, you need to do this, you need to do that, and it's in fine print. So just take that time to manage that process. Concise paragraphs. I would say a good paragraph, and I think if I were to ask students what they think a good paragraph would be, would probably say 2 to 3 sentences, but you actually want to go to between 4 and 6 sentences per paragraph. And that includes like an opening statement, couple of sentences, and then close a statement. And I'll show you the actual layout in a minute. At the end, you don't need to say that indicate that you look forward to meeting them, not that you hope to meet them. So you want to be assertive, but without being, kind of demanding and aggressive. First impressions count, and that means that it's visually laid out. I wouldn't have font any smaller than, I'd probably go between 10 and a maximum of 12, perhaps 9. I just got a message here. Oh, the type of cover letter in the document or in the email directly. How do I know it's 1 page if I type it? Oh, okay. Thank you. Great question. So what will happen? That's amazing. Thank you, Jean-Lee. So what will happen in Australia here? You'll most likely apply through Seek. The main ones are Seek, Jura, Indeed, ethicaljob.com. There's some of the main platforms where, and then if there's some state government, New South Wales, I work for New South Wales. There's a Queensland version that applications may go directly, but a lot of the time, large percentage of the time, you apply through Seek. And when you apply through Seek, so you'll see the job advertisement in Seek, and then it will tell you that it wants you to write a cover letter. So the cover letter will be separate to any email. The only time you will send an email is if it's a great question, particularly because many students that this is, for me, and probably for my colleagues here, we've been doing it for a while, and we forget, the things that those gap between what we're doing all the time. So so you'll see a job advertisement on Seek, and it will tell you what they expect from you, what they're going to bring to you, and then they'll say, this is how to apply. And you usually apply through a platform a lot of the time called Seek, and then you upload. Most of the time they ask you to, but again, it can vary a lot, but most of the time they'll ask you to upload a 1-page cover letter and a 1-page or a resume, and that they won't say how many pages, but they'll usually say a 1-page cover letter. And so you won't be, in many cases, you won't be emailing anybody directly. However, as was really beautifully highlighted to me last week, that when you are perhaps looking to gain some sort of additional research in your, related to your master's or a project or your PhD, there are ways that you can do some research and then send a specific little email introduction. But I would still looking requesting, you could say something like, my colleague suggested that I contact you. I'm working on a project. I noticed that we both have similar expertise, interest, etc. And then you could attach a cover letter and a resume. It can be a really powerful way of doing it, but a lot of the time students don't feel necessarily comfortable to do that. I would say it's a wonderful way via referral, but a lot of the time, and it's tricky. We can talk more about that next week as well. So hopefully that. So the email will be separate if there's an email requirement involved. In the email, you would just say something like, thank you for the opportunity. If there were, if a friend gave you a referral and said there's a research assistant job coming up at the uni 2 days a week, please contact Joe Smith. Then you'd say, dear Joe, I'm writing to you based upon the suggestion of my friend, say your friend's name. They said, they stated that you may have a position as a research assistant, and then say something about how excited you'd be, but just say, please find the attached, and you would still do a cover letter and a resume. Hopefully that helps, and that's clear. The thing that I have noticed over the last it started to change quite a bit before the pandemic is that the process, and it's still, I was just sharing with Alison, I hope to bring you some feedback soon. The Department of Education and Employment Relations has just run a webinar on AI. So lots and lots of change. Recruiters are realizing they're not getting the candidates that they want by using they spend 90% of its algorithm. It's not humans that are reviewing your application, but the recruiters are finding their own challenges by doing that. So I'll hopefully like to bring next week, be able to bring along and share some of that with you. But the reason I mention that is because it used to be very traditional. It used to be, you'd send it was always a cover letter and a resume, and now sometimes they say no cover letter, or they want you to click on a link and do a short video. So it's changing. So it's changing all the time, and it's changing really quickly. And the programs that they use automatic tracking systems to select the best match applicants is changing really quickly as well. So what I would say is just always read the instructions. And if there's an option to not include a cover letter, and I practiced it just for fun the other day, I sent there was a job, and it gave you the option not to include a cover letter. And I thought, this is just one final experiment of this. No hit. So always include a cover letter, even if they say that because I don't think you'll ever, I mean, if you do a 10-page cover letter, you may lose marks, but you'll never lose marks. And I say marks. If it says, if they specifically say no cover letter, then I would not include a cover letter. But if they don't mention, either way, a cover letter, then I would include a cover letter. But what you'll find in many cases, still, they will ask for a cover letter. Your cover letter too is like it's a snapshot. It's like an executive summary really, if you're writing a report. It needs to be a hook to engage the reader. The hook could cause the reader that hook always is in that first paragraph. You do want to make sure that you've looked at a lot of the keys are in keys to success are in the job advertisement itself. So what students often do is they write what they think, like they'll look at a job and then they'll write a cover letter and they will write that cover letter based on what they think the employer wants them to say, rather than going really meticulously. And I hate meticulousness, but when I apply for a job and I'm working with students, that systematically going very carefully through the job advertisement, highlighting every key word, everything about what they say they want you to be, and how you can say that to them, back to them in their own language, in their own, without using exactly the same words. They're going to say everything they want from you. And then they're going to say everything that they're about. And then you want to make sure you tell them, I'm about that too. So, for example, they might, if you're applying for a job with Virgin, they might say, oh, it's a fun, vibrant, youthful. They probably can't say youthful now. Well, they maybe. So you want to give that essence of play and fun, joy, um, that sense of optimism. If you so that when they read that, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, that sounds just like us. And that hook can really come in that first paragraph. You must also be really specific about the job that you are applying for. In many cases, federal government, even state government, local government will have lots of jobs that they're advertising it for at the same time. And so if you're not, they'll often have like a specific, it might be a code number. They'll always state the position. So make sure that you state the position really clearly, either in that first paragraph or in the, you can put like just before you start to, I'll show you on the next, I'll show you on the next page, but really clearly state the position. There might be several positions. Okay, so up here we've got your details are going to go top right, their details are going to go on the left. You're going to put your date, month, year, here. So regarding the title, and there might be a reference number that goes here. You're always going to use the surname. Don't use any nicknames. It's always safe to use and courtesy to use a surname. It's the safest, easiest way, and then a Mr., Miss, or Mrs. And if you don't know, it's probably best to try to find out if they identify as a male. And sometimes they'll put their pronouns, he, she, they. So just make sure that you do your best to get it attentioned to the right person, but being formal and using their surname. In the first paragraph, you're going to introduce why you're applying for the job. Think about how your values, experience, skills, goals align to the employer. Research what they're about and what they're looking for in an applicant. So research, and then you're feeding it back to them. And what we mean by so experience could be anything. It might be, and I know that for a number of our postgraduate students, industry-based or Australian-based experience can at times be not as lengthy. There's not as much as you would have liked to have had because you're juggling, learning a new language, adjusting to a new culture, and getting a part-time job and volunteering is extra. What I would like to say just on that point, just a couple of hours a week on a Saturday can transform both you as an applicant, etc. But you may not be there yet. You can draw on other experience, specifically from your studies, any sport that you play, anything that you have done in your country of origin, anything related to your personal strengths. So I'm working with a group of Japanese students at the moment, and this is actually my second term with them, and I've been delighted by their professionalism, their conscientiousness, meaning that they always turn up to class, they're always trying their best, they're always trying to follow instructions, and employers absolutely love. It's one of the top. It's one of the top things that employers say that they want. They want. It's called. Um, uh, it's an acronym, um, and they want. I think it's an OCEAN is the acronym, and the O is for openness. So if you can show that openness in that willingness in your cover letter, willing to learn, willing to go above and beyond, willing to take on different opportunities, skills, willing to do additional training, willing to come to an interview at a time that is mutually beneficial. Openness. They like so introverted versus extroverted personalities. It's not to say that because you're introverted that you won't get a job, or that you won't be a successful candidate, but they prefer some of the traits of, and this is broadly speaking, of extroverted personalities. So it's openness, conscientiousness. That's what made me think of it. Conscientiousness, and then they also want emotional intelligence. So those that are really aware of their own emotional regulation. They are aware of those around them, but also that they know how to work with others' emotions, so they can observe emotions in others, pick up on that, and then adjust their style and so forth. So in the first paragraph, you're going to introduce. In the middle, you can use bullet points. What I've liked to do, and it's been quite successful, is have like a couple of sentences in the middle and then a couple of bullets, maybe 3 or 4 of like key achievements. They don't need to be directly repetitious from your resume, but they can be, your key achievements from your resume. Try to make them as specific as possible, outcome based. So you sold X number of, more sales than somebody else, 25%, 5%, 2%, whatever it is, that you perhaps you've got some sporting achievements, perhaps you've got some academic achievements, that could be credits, distinctions. You can highlight any of those, and it can be really nice to have a little snapshot, because also visually they scan their eyes across the top, then they've done some tracking of this. What recruiters do, they scan their eyes really quickly across the top, and then they go down the middle, and then they spend a little bit of time reading along the bottom. So if you have a few bullet points, introduce that section. So you could say, below is a list of my, is just a sample of my most recent accomplishments, and that might be, as I said, project. It might be something to do with, something simple. You may not yet have, increased sales by 25%, but it could be ongoing feedback from your supervisor at Gloria Jeans about how well you work with customers, how well you take on feedback, how well you're training other staff. It doesn't have to be. I've just been marking an assignment with students, reflecting on skills that they have had, and they had some really wonderful examples from, when they're coaching. One student talked about how she'd helped a brother or sister achieve their sporting achievements. Somebody else had helped a family member achieved academically. So they don't have to be, that you're not yet this, you're here to become the CEO if that's what you want, but they don't have to be these. Um, but they do, they will capture the attention, and you want them to be somehow demonstrating what we call employability skills. So those broader skills around how well you work in a team, communication, how you, organize, time manage, mentor people, coach people. So there's common themes. So you want to try to, but there's a lot of work that you do in other areas of your life that can really feed into demonstrating both you can do it by demonstrating your specific suitability for the job, but also if you get me, you get this, and this. And that's, I guess, a nice segue. This is an old slide. It's been around for a while, but I really, really love it because it helps you. I find visuals really helpful in terms of being able to, and having some sort of template and some sort of guide. Okay, now I fill in this. And so this is a way for you to prepare both for and you could just put it, I talked about this last week. I do a version of this, and I've still got it, few years old, on a big A4 piece of paper. And you can put these headings and then make sure there's enough space and then write all around them. So at home, it might be, over the years, I've seen students give amazing examples of how they've demonstrated employability skills in their home life with their children, just generally managing day to day with children in terms of scheduling and getting people into a routine and then being adaptable with them. Lots and lots of our students love to travel, and you have already demonstrated that love of travel. And that's really valuable because many students are international in our postgraduate courses, but also this applies to our domestic students as well. In order to get to another country, there is a lot of planning, there's a lot of timelines, scheduling, but also once you engage in that foreign destination, you need to navigate, a different culture, different processes, different procedures. If you're studying abroad, you need to learn a different education system. All that demonstrates adaptability, resilience, commitment to your future, motivation, and you're welcome to take any of those words. Lots of students I've seen over the years link their hobbies. I'd include your hobbies down towards the end of both your resume and your cover letter. Hobbies are a great one. Sport is always, and they can be hobbies, but also just in marking these assignments recently, I noticed quite a few students really, they were looking to work in education. I know we have plenty of postgrad students in education, and they really, they linked in the creativity aspect. And education requires an enormous amount of creativity, even if you're working in a tertiary environment. So that capacity to, come up with new ideas, new ways of, sharing, exchanging information, etc., etc. So you maybe, love art or pottery, or it might be multimedia, or in fact, my colleague and I were just chatting about artwork at the beginning, and it's an outlet, but also it gets you to its self-expression, but it also differentiates you as well. So hobbies are fabulous. So if it might be, you might enjoy surfing, and that might demonstrate, your ability to, make your own decisions as you're out there, independence, a love of being, in nature, and mindfulness. Or you might work in a football team. You might play in a football team, which requires collaboration, coordination, problem solving, teamwork. In your part-time work, I've noticed students are getting much better part-time jobs, which is great, but you might be working in administration, you might be working on the reception desk, all of that. You might be working at Spotlight, um, or you might be working at McDonald's. But all of those are great. McDonald's or Spotlight or any of those big firms or big corporate companies, they have really strict health and safety policies and procedures that you must follow. Safety and security, being able to behave in a certain way. So lots and lots of ways for you to be able to. Oh, I lost you guys. Oh, hang on. Stop sharing the screen. Hang on. Did somebody enter the room? Let me just see if I can share again. Excuse me. Excuse me. Ah, here we go. Hello to who's joined us. Oh, yeah, gently. Nice. All right. So social clubs. I know that can be harder for students. If traveling to uni costs, the cost of getting to uni, but perhaps any online, anything that you can join. As you can join, of course, the Postgraduate Association. You can also join SCU on LinkedIn. You can also join the SCU alumni. And if you have a look for them, great place to find other students. You can also join, and you will see that there'll be an announcement about this soon. Every couple of terms, there is the Bright Futures mentoring program, which is formed students. Again, will look fabulous in a cover letter, a resume. So much happens in the community in terms of, like, there's neighborhood watch, there is community sporting events, there's Gold Coast City Council has events every week, doing things like land care, the Swell Festival, the sculpture by the beach at Currumbin, all wonderful, wonderful events. And you're lucky if you're actually, in fact, our students, I think, are really lucky. So if you're located down Lismore area, you've got things like the Lismore Lantern Parade, which is a beautiful event that's been held along. Great community focus down in the Lismore area. Also, if you're further down at Coffs, really multicultural destination down there. Lots and lots of ways for you to get extra experience to put into your cover letter. And I think the Gold Coast are brilliant, and Brisbane are really good at. Queensland in particular is better than New South Wales, I think, in terms of facilitating community events. There's a big event up in Brisbane that Brisbane Riverfest. They're always looking for volunteers for that, and that's what will make you stand out. But also, it'll help you meet other people that you can get a job with, and you don't have to go through Seek. This is also one of my favorite slides. If you feel like with this, it might just highlight to you, regardless of where you're at. I noticed last week we had people that were towards the end and those that are at the beginning. What I would say is that it's not too late to quickly go and get some. You could sign up for Park Run today and turn up on Saturday. Park Run at Main Beach, Park Run at Varsity Lake. There is a Tugun Community Garden. So you could have 4 weeks. It would take 4 weeks, 3 or 4 weeks to get a job by the time you put in the application or review the application. So in 4 weeks, you could still get, 4 Saturdays. So if you're at that final stage, you could still get enough to fatten out your cover letter and your resume with something that makes you unique, but gives you that community, local-based experience, but also helps you develop your skills, personal attributes, and highlight some achievements. If you're fortunate enough to go out on placement or internship, again, please don't. I know that so few students, because I teach on one of the postgrad internship units, many students, 95% of students, postgrad students in the MBA program, choose not to do internship. I would, if you could push yourself to do that, the students that have done it over the years, the numbers have been very small, have benefited. So I had a girl last year or the year before last, Chinese international student, and she got half paid, half volunteer job. She got to do as part of her studies. I think she was doing about 30 hours a week, and maybe 15 of those hours were paid, which was wonderful. And she went on, as far as I know, she went on to stay with that employer. So, whew, amazing. What are the most valuable things you've learned? And so these can give you really tangible outcomes to put into your cover letter, which reduces that issue of it being really I guess, generic. You want it to be you, and you want it to be really specific, and you want to make it stand out, but also you want to make sure that you're matching as many words from their application in terms of their job description to what you, and I, again, would take a screenshot perhaps of this. Alison sends out the slides at the end, but I sometimes take screenshots of things so I can kind of just have it really handy, and then I can go while I'm working on something, okay, I need to remember that, rather than having a whole file that I've got to go into and then find it and carry on. But everybody has different ways of working, but that's one way. But no matter what work you did, and you could see section 3 here, what was your contribution to the organisation? You could talk about a teamwork, it could be a project, it could be a team assignment, it could be a pairs assignment. You could tailor that response as part of your cover letter around, it doesn't have to be your voluntary role or your part-time job. You could do it purely. I've seen students when it's done well, and that's where myself or Susie's team can be really helpful in terms of helping you flesh. One of the things that I have really enjoyed working one-on-one with people is, and Susie's team are amazing at this as well, is that when you have an appointment with a career practitioner, we're trained to help you identify. It's so hard, like even as a practitioner, if somebody would say to me, oh, what are your greatest strengths, or what have you done in the last 2 years that is suiting, like, oh, I don't know. But if you have somebody prompting you around specific things and encouraging you and giving you that time and that empowerment and support to reflect, you'll find that there are a ton of things that you haven't considered. Also, when you're putting a cover letter together, I found that from personal experience and also from students, is that your partner, your family, your grandparents or your parents or your nonna or whoever's closest to you, brother, sister, they remember really cool things that you've done, and they remember your wins when you've long forgotten them, because I guess they get that, oh yeah, remember when you did that? My grandma used to remember everything. So and we've moved on, long forgotten it, but they're things that really bring great pride to them. So you can have a chat to those people that are around you that will remind you of the cool stuff that you've done, or you can get them to say, what do you think my strengths are? And family is always good, because they will be honest. Well, a lot of the time they'll be honest, more so than your friends. Your friends can be really helpful, but depends on the nature of it. But that can give you really tangible, specific, and then when employers reading your cover letter, they get that sense of love of who you are, rather than, I work really well in a team, I've got good communication skills. And so both of those are fine points, but we want to know where and how you gained those skills, achievements, experiences. Was it with the community garden, or was it on that project, Or was it when, you had to troubleshoot at the uni, some of the, the computer system had gone down, but you actually knew how to help somebody else, get their program up and running, etc. Was there anything noteworthy that you learned from your mentor, supervisor, or other staff? I've seen this done really well. So you can, as another way of fattening this up, and also it gives them an idea of, I guess, that your values. You can state that whilst I was on placement, I learned this, that from my mentor. That, so if they was somebody, it could be somebody on your part-time job and they're working in aged care and they're a supervisor on the floor, and you found that they're incredibly patient, um, with the elderly person, that they were really empathetic, they listened really carefully, and that's amazing learning if you're going to go into, podiatry, speech pathology, um, you know, mental health, geriatric, mental health well-being. Um, and so they're wonderful, wonderful learnings, and importantly, it'll show your strength, your values. What would employers state? Your strengths as an employee. So perhaps have a look, like if you've had to do performance appraisals, or they've congratulated you on things. There's some useful insight here. These few pages here, that one, this one, and this one is like the ding-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling, the gold. And so I'd suggest when you're putting your cover letter together that you focus on those. If you unpacked this page, and this page for a few hours, and every time you apply for a job, you go back over these three, you will find, and then of course you must look at the job advertisement, and you wrap all this together. You can, once somebody accepts and you get an interview on a cover letter, you're off on your way, because it means that you know how to convince the machine, the AI, in Seek or Jira or whatever, but you also know how to talk to direct, because usually what will happen is it'll cull, and then a human being will look at the final applicants to prepare people for a job. So here's a little, I'm going to take a break in a couple of minutes, and then I'm going to talk about the selection criteria which feeds into it. But I just want to give you, and again, I'd suggest taking a screenshot of this, because it tells you, we're telling you here basically what to, like a frame for what to include in each paragraph. So again, if I was sitting here, what I would do is, depending on where I was at, I would make sure I've got enough, any sort of work experience. If I needed to, I'd make an appointment with myself or with Susie's team. If I was lost or stressed, or if there's something I needed to apply for immediately. But I'd also take a screenshot of this, and I'd also make sure I went on to the SCU resources, because you can download sample cover letters in there, which makes it 10,000 times easier, and will remind you at the end how to access those services. There's some of the things, and I'd take a couple of screenshots. So if you had a screenshot of, I guess this, just to remind you, screenshot of what you need to brainstorm, how you could unpack it, your top achievements, and then here, how to put it all in here, then you would be, as long as you've got the job advertisement printed out or somewhere ready to go, highlighted those key points, that is like the core of what you need. So that's a real ding-a-ling-a-ling. And I know that's, like kind of a little bit boring to have to kind of go through a whole lot of slides, etc. So I want to really highlight to you, this is the crux of it. All right, so I'm just going to quickly, for 2 minutes now, just want to go through, I've talked a lot about this, but just go through it again. So up the top, all of your contact details, make sure you put their position, make sure you put the date, and then you want to follow this format. you could choose one of these options. I'm replying to the advertisement, I'm writing in the suggestion of my friend Claire, or seeking an employment opportunity. If you'd put in your course name. If it's an internship, you'd put in details about the internship. I have seen this, and this is an SCU template. If it's for something immediate, like working on some sort of immediate project or internship, then put your date availability as it is here. But if it's for a jobby job, part-time job or graduate position, I would leave your availability for dates out at all. What I would just say at the end is that you're happy and excited to, looking forward to seeing them. Then you can work out all the dates later. But if it's for something specific like internship or live ideas, you can immediately tell them your availability. Then you're going to remember to use the job advertisement, use the clues from the job advertisement and tell them how you've got maybe they've talked about communication skills, how well you've fully developed those communication skills. Then in your, and I would sometimes suggest you could do that for 2 paragraphs, and then your final couple of paragraphs, why you specifically want to work for that employer. Make sure it's genuine. And so to combat it sounding really like, you've got a nice website, think about why you really, and don't apply for a job unless you really want it. Because if you don't really want it, they will know you don't really want it. So apply for the one you really want and give it tons of love. With your, hang on, sorry, down the, right. Yeah, so why it's in research to the employer, clues, why you want to work for them. You could also, in your 4th paragraph, talk about special areas of interest. That works if you want to give them, like it's a big organization and like it's a hotel in on the Gold Coast, and they're also recruiting for front office, and they're also recruiting for events catering. You could mention other areas. If it's a jobby job like a graduate position, I would spend more time talking about in the second, and make it a 3rd paragraph, about how you specifically meet the criteria for the job. But I would always do this one here about why you guys are a great fit for one another, but do it from your heart. Then you're going to close the letter and thank them. Express your availability for an interview. You can do that. It's useful for part-time casual work. I always like to keep that last paragraph pretty succinct because they're in a rush and they're like, it's kind of blah, blah, blah at the end. But just make sure you frame it that you hope to, not that you hope to, but that you're looking forward to seeing them soon. You can put an electronic signature in there and your name. I'm going to finish up here. Final tips: tailor. Always address it to the person. Use similar words to the advertisement. Include your relevant skills, experience, job. Focus on specific evidence. So what you achieve from those jobs. Make sure it's 1 page and use concise paragraphs. But I suggest between 4 and 6. Okay, let's take 5. And then we're going to get into the super duper important point of selection criteria. Don't leave town, because even if you're not applying for a job that needs separate selection criteria now, you might go into a corporate organisation now, but there may very likely be a time where you want to apply for a university, particularly if you're in academia. You might want to work for state government, local government, federal government, defence, the education department, mental health, hospitals, roads and transport, employment services. So stick around. It's going to take 5. We'll come back in at I'll make it 6. So we'll come back in at 10 past, and I'm going to do 20 minutes on selection criteria. I'm going to do a little bit more. I think that'll actually be enough given the weight of, the percentage initially of students that will need a cover letter versus selection criteria, but it is super duper 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 important. So I'll be back at 10 past, and then stick around, or even if you're like, oh, that's not for me, or you're listening at home, please come back in at the end in the last 30 minutes, because Alison from the Postgraduate Association and Susie will join us. And they have both, over the years, they've both shared wonderful personal experiences and things they've learned from other students. And it's really lovely to hear things from a different perspective. And over the years, they've both shared wonderful experience. So we're going to kind of encapsulate that at the end. And then if anybody wants to ask any questions, you are most welcome. All right, see you soon. Thanks. All right, just one more minute. It's just gone. Just about to go 11:10. All right, so we are going to move now into the selection criteria. And I know from our students that completing, and rightly so to a certain extent, that selection criteria can cause an enormous amount of confusion, sometimes anxiety, but also super duper importantly, hopefully today, this next 20 minutes will help you understand what you need to do, but it's also can be a very easy way for employers to cull applicants. Very simply, some people don't do it at all. Some people don't follow the instructions, and some people don't do it properly. And so I'm going to give you a snapshot. What I would suggest, and this is one of my ding-a-ling-a-lings. If you have a job that's coming up, or it's in 3 months' time, or even 2 years after you graduate, as postgraduate students, you can use the SCU careers team for 2 years. And so you start with a corporate company, and then you want to work in a hospital or some other government organization, not for profit, and they get this, I've got to do a selection criteria. I would absolutely suggest, or keep a copy of these slides, just pop it somewhere on you can take screenshots or pop it on your, I would definitely, when the slides come through, keep it somewhere. So then you don't have to go hunting and trying to figure out what to do for selection criteria. But most importantly, I would get Susie or one of her colleagues to help you with the selection criteria, because they are the masters. They will not write it for you, but they will really help you unpack it, improve the examples, etc. So strong suggestion there. Don't assume that you're going into an organization where you won't need it. Things change. Sometimes you might have to relocate for children, or for a partner, or for parents, or what have you, or for yourself. You need to relocate somewhere, or there's a fabulous job you want to do, and it's in a different arena, and you must do selection criteria. Maybe you want to go to Canberra. Many of the jobs in Canberra, you're gonna need selection criteria. Okay, so what are selection criteria? They're a list of qualifications. So qualifications are what you're doing now. You're developing or completing your qualification in postgraduate study, your master or your PhD, or I think there's graduate certificate, any post, so after you've done your undergraduate study. Your personal qualities, so your strengths, your personality, so those things like conscientiousness, optimism, motivation, drive, etc. Skills and abilities, so you have skills in programming, you've got skills in project management, you've got abilities in in engaging with stakeholders, building partnerships, etc. Your knowledge and experience, you will have gained a lot of that from various different places. You gain that through your studies, through your projects, through your assignments, through your research, through your mentors, through your internship, your work experience. All of that is that collection of what you will include in a selection criteria. And when an employer says that they're giving you selection criteria, they're telling you what that person, you, needs to do to perform the role effectively. It's you will address it 95% of the time. And I was saying to Alison, a lot is changing behind the scene, but for now, you will address it in writing. And what it does, it's supposed to be, and if anybody ever watches the news, you'll see that it often comes up where, what do they call it, jobs for the boys. But the process is that it's supposed to be a transparent process where that they use for equity reasons, but for transparency reasons, that everybody is measured against how well they have addressed and answered the selection criteria. It is supposed to be for transparency. What often, unfortunately, does happen is that it's the job's already been, and this is where, to the best of your ability, don't take any of it personally. Very hard not to, because you put your love and your heart and your soul into it. But sometimes, particularly in academia, government, all industries, all work, they've often got somebody lined up. And that's why, if you listen to last week's class, I spent a lot of time talking about you actually want to be the person that's lined up. You want to somehow already have the foot in the door, and then you're just filling out the paperwork. Because it has to be filled out. It must be by law filled out in many organisations that are funded, government funded, research centres, etc., universities, as I mentioned. It's a way to shortlist the applicants against the criteria, but it also forms a basis for the interview, and it's a way that they compare applicants against the responses, and it's supposed to ensure fairness. So what they do is, and then when you get down to the final stages, they will compare based on the selection criteria. The interview will be a part of that process, and the interviewers will be using part of that as a criteria and scoring you against that criteria. So it's just like telling a story when you're addressing selection criteria. You're going to have a situation. So it might be, and it doesn't have to be, really complex ones about how you, come up with some new technology or developed an app. It can be an example from McDonald's and from Spotlight or from Coles. So whilst on the evening shift at Coles, that's the situation, or whilst I was in the lab working on this, or this, I was required to do, which is the task. I was required to, close the shop if it's Coles or a retail store. And what was so that was the requirement, or if you're in the lab, you were the last person that, needed to scan through some of the results or what have you. And then what was required? So you're closing the store, the retail store, the candle store in Varsity Lakes, and then a customer, maybe they want to come in. You've got 2 minutes to a closing time. You're all wrapped up, thinking you're ready to go, and a customer comes in and they desperately need a present for a family member. And what you do is you stop what you're doing in terms of, packing the store down. You help them for those 2 minutes, and you suggest a beautiful candle for them. And I'm just giving you a really simple example. And then what happens? They write to your store manager. They put a Google review, and they say, that was fabulous. That staff member, I knew there was only a couple of minutes less, but they explained the candle, they explained the scents, they explained how long it would last for, they explained the wrapping paper, they even wrapped it up beautifully. They went above and above with that candle. And I use a really simple example because I think we can get really frightened by them. Ideally, you want to use examples from internship, from work experience, from specific built-in placement. Great, but sometimes we don't have those. But I guess that's another reminder to try to take those actions to get that additional experience. But you could apply this to a project, an assignment where you worked as a pair, even an individual assignment. It could be related to perhaps feedback that you got from your tutor. Maybe they asked you, yours was exemplary, and they asked you to present it to other people in the class. So you'll always have a situation, so it's like a beginning, a middle, and an end. And then recently, in more recent years with the STAR model, we've added reflection, and that can be, what have you learned? What do you need to improve? And so if we go back with that retail example, it could be something as simple as, you know, really what, you know, they got that beautiful feedback, and what they learned was that the customer, and honoring the customer, the customer's needs, trying to solve a problem for them, and ensuring that they have a top experience, and that they go away happy. It reminded you that that's what you need to be doing in that candle store, just as an example. So the advertised role, so how will you be assessed? You will be assessed on your ability to demonstrate the following key capabilities, knowledge, and experience described in your role. The ideal applicant will be someone who has, so here is an example, proven ability. So proven ability means that you need to demonstrate how you have done, how ability to communicate effectively in a written, verbal, electronically within a team. Now, that doesn't mean you've, you know, worked on the CSRI or whatever it is, a SRO project. You could have worked on a, there could be three of you on a, on any unit, on any project, and perhaps you communicated via a WhatsApp group, you communicated in text message, in email, you were a team leader, or you supported other team members when they were struggling, but you did it through electronic media with the team. So that could be it could be Zoom, it could be Collaborate, and written and verbal. So perhaps you had team meetings and you were the one to motivate, help people get to the deadline, etc. So the process, again, I would use a mind mapping process. So they'll have sometimes, like if it's university, if it's academia, they have way too many selection criteria. It's going to be, it can sometimes be a few pages. They are an absolute nuisance. I won't sugarcoat it. However, again, once you've got some examples, you get some hits. Okay, you can't do, but you can, if you've got really good examples from your placement, for example, you can tweak them and regurgitate them. And if you send one to New South Wales Health and then one to South Australia Health, and then, you know, one might be to a, you know, a similar, it might be a community, some sort of community health program. You can tweak those examples. So here, if you look here at an example, so each of the criteria they'll be looking for, communication comes up, which I often have a bit of a giggle for, because you know, it doesn't matter if it's a lecturer at, you know, a senior lecturer. So to be a senior lecturer, you've got to be a baby lecturer at some point, and a medium lecturer. You'd think to get that far that they would have communication skills, but they'll still ask you for examples of your communication skills. So communication, teamwork, organizational skills, there's often some themes, and then there can be some very, very specific to the role. So almost employability criteria often, and then some more specific ones. But if you look at this, and that's why I really love mind mapping, is that it can give you ideas that once you've got that visual, you're like, oh, okay, I've communicated with my colleagues, I've communicated in ways that you have demonstrated communication, but there could be more here. Communicated with your lecturers, communicated with team members, communicated with the neighbourhood watch, communicated with work experience, communicated with family abroad using Zoom. So here are some of the do's and don'ts. Do use, or let's get up to do nots. Don't use a passive voice. So you want to use action words, but don't make up examples, and don't be general, be specific, be honest. And don't use examples that, because you'll get into the interview and if you're not comfortable, they can pick up on all of that. Check for spelling errors, and don't change the order. So you want to keep, what I often do is just copy the 4 or 5 criteria and stick it into a Word doc and then type your answers one after another all the way down the page until you get to 2 or 10 pages, depending on how many criteria there are. Always, always, always respond to all criteria. So they may have in a job advertisement, even if they don't ask you for separate selection criteria, they will all often say essential and desired. Always answer every single one of them. And even they say that men are much more likely to apply for a job, even if they don't have the criteria, than women. But what you do, even if you don't have the criteria, demonstrate a way that you plan to, or you could develop that, gain that qualification, enroll in that course, get you working with children's check, whatever it is. Because they will often still bring you in for an interview, even if they won't if you haven't addressed them all, but if you have said, I'm willing to get a working with children's check, or some other formal qualifications. Only, of course, you are. Try to add results, outcome for each action. Give specific examples. Be positive, be succinct, and be honest. You can actually ask them. You can send. There's often a contact person. Just bear in mind that if you do make contact with them, they do become familiar with your name. You can talk to them on the phone, but again, be really well prepared for that conversation if you want to find out perhaps how long each of them will be. I would always say about a couple of paragraphs for each. So here is just an example of one. I won't go through all of it, but just the person has outlined the situation, outlined the broader context. You don't have to do that. You could actually squeeze a bit of the opening bit into the situation, but has fully framed it in terms of experience as a nurse, then gone into the situation. An example of where I've done this was at Lismore Based Hospital, etc. I realised, so this is what happened, and this is where, and you can highlight things that you want them to see, and that can make it as the example's done here. And then what was the results? So spend the bulk of your time looking at the results of your work. Often I see students spend way too much time framing the whole scenario. When I was here and it was 4 o'clock in the afternoon, just be really succinct with that, but spend the bulk of your time on the results and the reflection. So there's a full example there. I'll leave you guys to it. So here's just an example of a job advertisement, and just stating, so it's just taken from one. You will be assessed on your ability to demonstrate the following key capabilities, blah, blah, blah. So here are some examples. The ability to deliver competent, holistic consumer care, blah, blah, blah. Ability to practice in accordance with legislation, policy, procedure. And you can look at, you will have done some of these things in your assignments in many cases. You can look at, very, very useful to look at the professional associations like APRA, if it's health. You can look at, of course, their websites, any other government agencies associated with that line of work. Commitment to personal learning, growth, and relationships. And so that would be, what other activities are you doing? Ability to communicate effectively. So as I said, it's in there so often, written, verbal. Ability to appropriately manage resources and actively participate in quality and research activities. And this could make somebody anxious, perhaps if you're, your early stages of your PhD. But look at, perhaps things that you have done with your honours, any other projects. Maybe you've done other qualifications. And here's a different type of example. I won't go through all of that. And here we are. I'll just share this with you before we have a chat to Susie and to Alison. The next workshop is very closely linked. They're all linked. I sort of move up and down between them. I don't, of course, repeat the same thing over and over again, but I have touched on resume a bit today, and I have touched on LinkedIn. Please, if you can't, love for you guys to sign up. If you can't attend live, it's absolutely fine. We know that people are watching behind the scenes, so we're grateful for you engaging, because we do, as a team, want the absolute best for you. So let's go this way, and I will start. Susie's in a training seminar, so she will pop in as soon as she can get in here. We have the lovely Alison here, and I would love to hear from Alison, who's been involved and worked in and has had several jobs that have required selection criteria, and I've heard some of yours. So I'd love for you. I'll set some questions. What would you, and you get put on the spot here, but I know what would be your top tips for selection criteria, particularly as you've been successful?
Yeah, well, applying for this job, even though we're recording, I'll keep it, applying for this job was about 10 selection criteria. So very, very thorough. Just listening to what we were saying earlier, sometimes it's hard to get perspective on your own skill set. And I remember kind of saying to someone, I don't know how to answer this particular selection criteria. It's about this, this, and this. And someone said, remember when you did that volunteer work a couple of years ago for a community group? And I go, that's right. So talking to, as you said, friends, family, ex-colleagues or something can just remind you of your own skills, because it is hard to kind of stand outside yourself in some ways. So that was a good point. Yes, I think answering selection criteria, you've sort of got to say, yes, I'm a good communicator, but also give examples when your communication skills came to the fore and was useful and helpful and got through some crisis or drama or whatever. So real world examples, I guess, of those selection criteria, because we can all kind of say, yeah, I'm really good at this and I'm really good at that, but you sort of need to demonstrate it, as you were saying. Yeah. So talking to other people can help kind of prompt you in answering those selection criteria. Yeah.
I loved actually that you picked up on that, because I have certainly had those experiences myself, and it's so
yeah, that's right, I forgot I did that, or whatever, whatever the example was. Yeah.
When it used to be my grandmother, she was just super cute, because they make a little mental note of your wins.
Yes, that's right. That's
so
right.
such a broad range of students, ages, backgrounds, and family circumstances, but they do, and also, like you said, colleagues.
Yeah.
That can be, part-time
Yeah.
work.
Yeah. Just kind of reminds you of things that you've achieved or you did well that you may have forgotten about. Yeah.
And they offer it from another, I think also it lands, certainly my experience has been it lands differently when somebody tells how they saw your experience of doing that in that context. And you sort of go, oh, like I didn't,
That's right.
yeah, I didn't
Yeah,
see.
like, yeah.
And I think that can be really powerful.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Is there any?
I think also like with the writing the cover letter, I you know, put together a couple of paragraphs. But I think like you mentioned, it was a bit passive.
Yeah.
And so it had to be kind of I sentences. I'm enthusiastic about this opportunity. It really fits with my skills and experience. And, you know, I guess what's difficult sometimes is we're not used to putting ourselves forward like that.
Yep.
So I wrote a cover letter and then I got a friend who's not in the same industry just to read it for me. And they made some really good points, so I just kind of go back and edit it going, oh yeah, it's really passive and a bit desperate or something. So getting a critical friend to read your work, it's your work, it's your writing. But to get someone to just go over it sometimes it's really helpful too before you submit it. Yeah.
I think that's a brilliant idea. And I have to say, personally, 95% of the time, I have asked at least one or two of trusted
Yeah.
friends, colleagues.
Mm,
And if I was applying for a job tomorrow, I would still do the same thing. I'd
yeah.
use tools. I would use Resume. I mentioned this one, but just because I know we've got different people, I would use Resume Worded for the resume. And I know that's for next week, but you can put your LinkedIn there. I think you can definitely put your resume. I would use Resume Worded. I would also
Great.
use Career One. They have a free service. And then I would use the STU careers team. So Susie will come and have a chat. And I would use, I remember it was a few years ago, and it was real. Oh God, it feels like it was probably 4 years ago now. But that's how I actually learned a lot about AI and all those, and made those some
Yeah.
errors. But it was really fortuitous because I was in this, and some of my colleagues were, because the technology was really changing at that point. So using multiple ways,
Mm,
so because you've got to win the hearts of the AI and the human being, and
yes.
that's the trick now. And
Yes.
and then having somebody else, I 100%, I think that's probably a gold point in there,
Yeah.
is somebody else read it, and then also they can sort of say to you, you're being a bit passive, or you're underselling yourself here, or you
Mm,
sound a bit vague, or you're
mm.
lacking, you're sounding, I mean, they probably wouldn't say to you, you sound desperate, but that,
But it can leak through sometimes, if you
yes,
know what I mean, very subtle ways. Yeah.
yes. And I think it's really hard, isn't it? Because you need to find that balance between showing that, like, I really want this.
Yeah.
Give it to me, give it to me, give
That's right. That's right.
And there's some times in your life where, I know for our students, particularly in the financial circumstances that we're in for many, and they've got sometimes a short period of time, there is a sense of desperation.
It can be, for
Yeah,
sure, especially if you've been out of work for a while.
that's right. And then self-esteem starts, yeah. And I think that's where coaching can be really to help
Absolutely.
you shift back into that I've got this mindset. I am enough. I'm good, and that trust, and then learning, okay, I keep doing this. I'm going to stop doing that. I won't give up on that dream, but now it's time to do something different. And so yeah, and it's it that the that bit between balance between being desperate. I love that you said that. Because
Well, you're enthusiastic,
it is
you
desperate.
know, it can come across, you know, sometimes I don't know. It's a fine line, isn't it? It can be too much. Some people, yeah.
Absolutely. And I guess that's where I think working, with Susie's tech is that they can almost, what I see is that those sessions help people put them back in a sense of personal power. and
Yeah.
and that because you can, I think, through the process, and it has been my experience as well, in those vulnerable times, you lose that sense of agency,
Mm.
and you can fall into that, I've got to, because you've got finance, you've got bills to pay or whatever.
Yeah.
You
Mm.
start grasping, and you'll apply for things that maybe, there's that desperado thing that goes on, rather
Mm.
than, okay, I've got this is
Mm.
what I'm going to do, I'm going to slow this down, I'm going to go back to what I want, or I've been doing this doesn't work, I'm going to try something different.
Mm. I wonder if Jean-Lay has any comments or questions she'd like to put to us, if you're still there. I mean, particularly any comments or questions for Beck, really.
No, for you too.
You know,
Oh,
oh, you're good. Thanks. You know, I did a crazy thing one time as I was applying for work and I misread the deadline. So the deadline was actually, it said 12 p.m. Wednesday, and I read it as 12 midnight.
oh,
So I thought I still had the evening to submit, actually, but it was 12 noon that it was due. So I'd already had a chat to the employer very briefly, and so they knew to expect a application from me. And then like they rang me that afternoon saying, well, where is it? It's past the deadline. And I went, oh, I thought it was 12 midnight. So you got it. There's a problem for people they can't even read the deadline properly.
oh,
Um,
it'd be even
so
worse because we've got so much information coming in.
I just, if they said 12 noon, I would have somehow, me and my brain
No,
just
but
went 12 p.m. I thought that was midnight, not 12 midday. Anyway,
did
you
they
know,
accept it?
they did.
Uh,
So I was very lucky only because I'd had a chat to them on the phone a couple of days before that they were familiar with my name and was expecting it.
yeah.
So there's an advantage of a brief phone call.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how employers feel about it, you know, about ringing up before you submit, but it sort of worked in my favor in that in that time. Oh dear, it's embarrassing, really. You get those simple things wrong,
Well, I think it's not. It's fortunate that it did work out, like, because you'd already made that contact,
Yeah,
and you'd obviously made. I mean, if you didn't make a good impression on them, they're hardly going to chase you up, are
I was so lucky they rang me.
they? I think
It's
that's
embarrassing, but anyway,
it's but
it
it's
happens.
that could be a common area, because I would actually do the same, because it's middle of the day is kind of like 5 p.m. You'd understand.
Yeah, 12 midday.
Middle of the day is kind of weird. I reckon they probably did a typo themselves.
Well, maybe they'll, yes. Well, that's a good point.
Yeah, because I've never seen one for the middle of the day. Um, but you did make a really good point there about um, uh, talking to the employer, what I've noticed with job advertisements is that you can actually get a sense whether they really want to talk to you or they don't. And it will say, oh, thank you. Thanks, Jarlyn. Is that they'll say, you'll see a slightly more genuine, like little blurb that goes with the contact details. And it's framed. I've noticed it framed slightly differently, where you can see there's a real genuine opening and happiness for them to chat, as opposed to contact person is, Smith. But it is a delicate one. I remember working with actually Susie's boss, and she was talking about how an applicant rang to join the team, and it was I just put, it wasn't, didn't say any names or anything, but what she said was really interesting, and particularly because it was in the careers team. She said that she just walked in and she said, well, that person won't be getting a job. And for the reasons that if you're going to do that, you really want to be very confident about what you're going to say, how you're going to say it, and and it sounds like you did all. So it's a little bit risky, but it can be it can go the other way, where it can be really powerful, like in your case, where they're looking for your application.
Yeah, it worked out okay, thank goodness.
And in fact, you just reminded, we had a student here a couple of years ago, and she just applied for a job and she hadn't heard back. She then came to the workshop, and then we had a little chat. I think just offhandedly, I said, how about you just send, you've got their email address. It was in a research, you've got email address, shoot them an email. And she got to the second round. I don't know whether she got the job, but making that extra contact worked. And again,
interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, I remember her.
I guess because they're on the phone, they write your name down or whatever, and then your name sits in their memory. So when they're sorting through applications, they go, oh yeah, I spoke to them. Yeah, or emailed them. Yeah.
So if you get to hear someone's tone and they're genuine, if you do it well, it's like, oh my God, they've bothered to call. So it could be, really want this. They want to ask questions.
Yes, that's right.
And it was that gentleman, I can't remember last week. He was he was at SCU in a research centre, and he said that he just emailed them. And it was just brilliant. Just went
fantastic.
Wasn't that
it's like cold calling, isn't it? Just get in touch with all your senior, head of the research team or whatever. Yeah.
He just told, what did he say? He said, I just told them, what I wanted to do, and I can't remember the details, but
it's really good. Yeah.
And he was talking to us from, I think he was at work. It was just beautiful. So thank you. That was just such gold and so helpful for the other lady that was there, that had gone through the other way of doing all the right things, going to all the websites and applying with all the other 150 people. So I think that's what it was. And that's why I wanted to have a chat to her, because I wasn't sure, what she was. But she did say that she thought there'd be lots and lots of other applications. And I haven't heard from hers, because she was, so she's obviously run with his idea, which is just beautiful. I mean, it worked for him, didn't it?
That's right.
I think as long as it, like cold calling is a bit of a hidden, but warm leads are really, really valuable.
I guess that's the thing too, but like with postgraduates, students, contacting their lecturer or unit assessor or course coordinator.
Absolutely.
For work, for marking, or teaching.
Yes, absolutely.
Because
yeah, when we get to LinkedIn, finding all of those
Yeah.
key.
Yeah.
What I've seen, and I don't, it'll probably be this, is that they do a little call out often in their little LinkedIn groups, often for small gigs,
Yeah.
and also it's not, well, it's just you and I and whoever happens to be listening here at the end. I had a situation for and this could be fun. I'll talk more about these sorts of things that I've tried with LinkedIn. Does it link to? Well, yeah, it links to all of this. It's not specifically to do with a cover letter, but it's about this theme. Is that there was there was a job that was advertised. And this could be a really, I suggest this later on when we talk about LinkedIn, is that over the last couple of years, I just put, it could even be more specific now, but my speciality. And then every time I'd see someone on LinkedIn that I thought was interesting, I'd send them a, can we connect, right? So just bundling them up. And then I'd say 80% of people accept. But anyway, it's not to do our link, but a little segue for that. And what happened was I saw a job come up. It was in South Australia. And it was just looked fabulous. And I was like, oh, that's fabulous. But I'm not going to South Australia. But we were connected on LinkedIn. So I wrote her a little note in LinkedIn and I said, love the look of that job. I wish I was in South Australia. And do you know what she wrote back and said? These couple of universities are merging and blah, blah, XYZ. Anyway, I don't need to kind of overshare. But the point is about those warm leads that she was
Yes.
in my bundle. And that's something that students can do, like the first point, really early days, just exactly like you said, is to just start with one tutor, start with, if you getting started so that you can avoid this big process, get a foot in the door, and into academia or like whatever, wherever it is where it's a bigger process, get a foot in the door where you don't have to do the full selection criteria and compete with a million people.
Yeah.
Make
Yeah.
contact with, and you can just start with us. So I'm
Yeah, good one. I find Twitter a bit like that.
which is now called X, I found out the
I
other day.
know. I still call it Twitter so people know what I'm talking about. But I just follow all my favorite.
X.
I know. It hasn't really taken off, that rename. But anyway, the people say X, formerly known as Twitter. um, I just as a, with my research hat on, I follow all my major authors and well-known academics and, from other universities and things. And they often post jobs like, oh, our department's got some research assistance money. Please check it out, because they're keen to get the right person on their team. And it's not really like, you still have to do a full job application, but it's just a way of finding out
Was my
where
job.
the research money is, or what, who's been funded and what they're doing. And yeah, so Twitter's quite good for academic connections.
Brilliant.
Mm.
Thank you. That's a gold. And also you get to see those conversations. You get to see
Yeah,
who's moving,
yeah, yeah.
who's
And it's
head
short. It's like
pops up everywhere.
180 characters or whatever it is. It's really short.
Oh, that's a great tip. Um,
Yeah, I think, yeah, it's a way academics, yeah, they seem to talk to each other on Twitter. Mm.
yeah, that is that's brilliant, because I think I was going to say is that over the probably, I don't know, maybe 4 years of kind of collecting people, and then I see someone, is that what you start to see is the patterns of, you can be really passive on there and you can see the patterns. Okay, these persons respond to this. These are the ones.
Yeah,
And then it really develops your understanding of that specific, whether it's plants or cups or whatever. You get to see who are the dominant folks,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I can
Yeah.
see
That's right.
students as they that's an easy, having a multi-pronged approach. As they, because it's just so hard. I'm so conscious of this leap in a way that students often have to make if they haven't come to see us early, and then, for whatever reason aren't getting some work, some sort of work experience. It's quite a large leap in some of the faculties to then go from, a couple of years here in Australia, but no contacts, no part-time job, so, and then straight to seek. It's a
Yeah, right.
so
Yeah. Yeah.
all those softer, small,
Mm.
multi-pronged ones can reduce that need to actually have to sit there and, write 55, and getting in early like that gentleman. I think he was, I'm so sorry if he's listening, because I hope he is, and big shout out, I remember his name. I think he was really early. He was in his first year here, which is just brilliant, because
Yeah. Yeah.
getting in and doing the two big load, but even a tiny bit,
Mm.
um, is um, is brilliant.
Yeah. We're coming up to time. I'm not sure if we'll get to hear from Susie today.
She might have been held up in. I know that she had the big, whatever it's called, their annual planning day.
Ah, right.
So,
All right.
well,
Are you? Shall we finish?
I love your, because I remember when you've jumped in the past, you just, because you've lived and breathed, and Susie again has those different experiences, and I'm just bored of listening to myself. And I hope you all aren't, though.
Well, are you good to finish up then?
Yes, absolutely. We will be. I'll just pop that final.
Yeah, great. Yes, come along next week to Beck's next Postgrad Masterclass.
And on it, hopefully on this one here, I'll move this.
Oh, great. So yeah, there you go. 12th of September, resume and LinkedIn profiles.
Yeah, so we've sort of done a bit of a little bit of promotion in a way for that LinkedIn. We'll talk about setting up the LinkedIn, but I'll also do a little bit of myth busting as well, because I think there are some myths, and but also share some of my experiences on there, things that I see work really well, etc., etc. Because it's really been the last few years that I've changed my own view on some of it as well, after watching, the behaviour on there. Largely that about only 85–90% of people do nothing on there except have their picture, and they've still got big jobs.
There you go.
That's a big myth that I want to, because I think students can get really anxious about being on there, and that they've got to do all these things. But
Yeah.
don't not come to the workshop, because I think as you move through your career, it can be really, and just getting on there is important to have a presence and a smoke and mirrors at the very least early days. A presence, so we'll help you talk about, that's a bare minimum, but you don't have to, post every day or.
Sure. That's good. I look forward to it.
Yes. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for your time, and you'll meet Susie next week. So I'll say, in fact, I've got her slide just on there. I just want to show you just the final slide. So which I promised that I would do. I wanted to just put that final slide back. It's gone. Put that final slide back up, but I'll stop sharing. It's gone. For the STU careers team, but it's the first slide in our workshop, just so that students know where to come. But the first slide SCU's backslash, or is that a / careers? Is that forward or back?
You're the other way around. So
a / careers. If you type in SCU careers, you will find.
yes, people will find if they search.
SCU careers, you'll find it. It's one platform and there's so many resources there. So I did want to mention that at the end, and a super duper team that are really, really engaging and happy to help. So see you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you. See you next week, Beck. Have a good week.
Bye.
Bye.